Hello, thank you for joining us for RSJ Dynasty Dive, Episode 2. First one here on YouTube. Episode 1 will be up on YouTube, but it wasn't on there live, so I believe that's up now. But I did not double check that before we came on. But, all right, so, drawing a blank. So I know usually it's Wolf, usually it's Truth, probably used to the fantasy fullback dive. But we're here, me and Emery, to give you hopefully some weekly content as time goes on. Hopefully it evolves more into some viewer engagement as we talk about some dynasty, a trove of dynasty topics you could talk about year round. But for right now, as we start off and get things going, we are going to be talking a lot about RSJ Dynasty, using that as a backbone. The RSJ Dynasty League is about to start its third year. We have our rookie draft coming up on Monday. So maybe you saw the startup draft, maybe you saw the rookie draft last year. This one will not be live streamed, so it can give some more credence to. I knew I was going to forget that. There we go. So it gives us some more, it doesn't put any pressure on us to make our picks and not do any draft day trades due to time constraints. So a lot of material before that happens. And so we're going to be diving into a couple of more recent offseason trades, as well as do kind of a first round rookie mock draft in our own league, which might not make sense at first, but Emery doesn't have a first round pick, and I have the second overall pick in the first round, which I've already cryptically told everyone in our league who I'm taking, but I have made peace with just outright saying it today. So, Emery, how are things?
Things are great. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2. We're excited to keep going on with this dynasty content we got here. And you hit the nail on the head. I think we are gonna hopefully transition more into trade breakdown and that sort of thing. But today we'll go over a couple more from the league, and then I go through our first round mock draft. I think we have a couple differences similar to last week, but What's first on the docket here?
So, and I'll say this again. So, nobody cares about your dynasty league, right? Well, it's hard to make any move in dynasty that doesn't have context, that doesn't have, substance, something to think about. And the main goal here on the Dynasty Dive is to keep your mind churning and keep your values fresh throughout the long, cold off season. So that's the main reason. Really the only reason to me to incorporate the RSJ Dynasty League. You'll get some insight that you won't really see in articles or other live streams typically. And team context I think it's pretty much everything if you're talking about trades and redraft. Now we're talking about dynasty. It's really, it's even more important. I need to know, I don't need to know who, just the trade, like, oh, who won this trade? And you see a screenshot from Sleeper. No, I need to know roster format, scoring format, what kind of situation are these teams in going into this. And so that's using RSJ Dynasty gives that background, gives that context to where not only are we talking about certain players and how we think their 2023 is going to go, but then you have that team context. How does it affect team trajectories in a dynasty league? So the two trades we're talking about today have players with a lot to talk about just on their own. But now they're in the context of a trade, in the context of dynasty, talking about what it means long term. And then when we talk about doing a first round rookie mock, this is more than just going off of personal rankings. This is taking existing team rosters, looking at their situations, and then we all kind of think Normally, best player available is the way to go in drafts, but there's all kind of strategies out there that kind of give some breathing room to go one way or the other based on what your team looks like. So that's the idea, bringing in RSJ Dynasty, talking about the first round of the rookie mock. And the main question that I want everybody to think about today, and maybe you were in this situation, maybe a league mate was in this situation. I don't know how many rookie drafts have happened by now. We're now into June, so maybe a little late to think about in the short term if you've already had your rookie draft. But for the long term, this kind of thing I think is pertinent every year, and you'll see it when we go to our rookie draft today. And that question is, you're sitting there this year with the rookie, you got the 101 in your rookie draft, and you know that you're in a multi-year rebuild. Question is, if you know you're in a multi-year rebuild, is Bijan Robinson the optimal choice to take at 101? So I'm just going to throw that out there. We're going to talk about a couple trades first, and then get into the rookie mock where we will hammer on that particular question, because I think there's a lot there. And so we'll talk about CJ is the one who has our 101 this year. If you're familiar with the Silent Assassin, his team looks like, I think, a very common rebuilding team. Yeah. So this is I think it's very relevant to CJ's team situation, and whether or not he will take Bijan Robinson, as crazy as it might sound not to. So we'll get to that in a bit. And Emery, if you got nothing else, we'll dive into our first of two offseason trades to get into here.
Yeah, let's do it. I believe mine is up first, correct?
No.
Okay.
I have. So I like to preface this also. We got two trades to talk about. One of them involves myself. One of them involves Emery, and that's accidental. When we changed the league year over to 2023, I couldn't help but notice that the 9 trades that were made, I was part of 7 of them. So it's been hard to avoid not talking about either of us. We're not just trying to be vain out here and play ourselves up. But so the first one we're going to talk about happened between myself and our fearless leader, the Wolf, who I'm pretty sure this is his 3rd trade in our Dynasty League. As far
maximum
as
third. I was thinking maybe it was only 2.
No, because there was this is at least 3. Actually.
At least 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and get into this yep. So we see the trade right here. I traded Darren Waller and Raheem Mostert to Wolf for Mike Gesicki and Jerome Ford. You got kind of a hot name in maybe Darren Waller going to the Giants there. Gesicki maybe is a hot name too. Really the only guy in here who has had a stable offseason is Raheem Mostert. Mostert, who entering his age 31 season, finally just last year got more touches in his career than Najee Harris did his rookie season. So, a young 31 going into 2023. Emery, what are your first thoughts here about how this went down?
So this is a funky trade because there's a lot of older names there. I believe Mostert is 30 and Waller is getting up there to 29, right? For a couple younger bucks, Wolf is seemingly pushing the chips in. I know we talked about it last week a little bit, in how Wolf's roster alignment has him teetering on the edge of competition every year, but he's getting old, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And this trade only makes him older. It does give him a little bit more firepower. And I know you as a Browns fan are enjoying getting Jerome Ford back there because of all the talk about Chubb this year. He's entering his year 27, his age 27 year. Yeah, so that cliff is coming pretty quick, and Ford seems to be the darling of a lot of dynasty talk at the moment. So I think this is it's a great one to talk about because there is the age difference there, as well as like tight end is a position with very little middle class. You know, Darren Waller is pushing into that top class, but he's certainly in the middle. And Mike Gesicki's in a new position, and we all know that he didn't work out down in Miami with McDaniels as the head coach there. He wanted a more inline blocking, and the Pats have had a history of great tight ends and a 2 tight end set, and Gesicki's going to fit right in. I saw the report yesterday out of OTAs that he was lining up and playing with the receivers. So, yeah, I think I don't want to put a grade on this, but I think it's both teams here, you and Wolf, made an interesting move. What's your rebuke there?
Yeah, so I was going to touch on a point you made earlier, but now I forgot. But Jerome Ford. So I this is offseason for me has been a little weird because I'm not a Browns homer. I mean, me and you are on here. We're part of a fantasy football like advice site, and I think one of the foundational pillars, is don't be a homer. And now here I sit after our 2021 startup having no Browns on my team, and now I have 3. And I would like to think that there is no Browns bias going on, but maybe something's going on in the subconscious. I really just looked at Jerome Ford, and I considered picking him up. I don't believe he got drafted in our rookie draft last year, so he was kind of floating around for a couple teams. I think Kendall Brown had him at one point, and I think Jackson had him at one point. And he was always kind of a guy on the fringe that I was keeping track of, but I just, for some reason, couldn't find a place for him on my roster. And so now, yeah, we got reports he's going to be the kind of, I don't know if he's going to exactly fill the Kareem Hunt role. It's very interesting. Like, I think he's got more raw speed than Kareem Hunt coming in. But, you know, the guy played, I think, 14 snaps last year. We really got nothing to go off except college tape. But I do tend to more or less trust the Browns front office. And, you know, I think Stefanski, his coaching can be a little weird sometimes. But when it comes to the front office moves, I tend to give Browns the benefit of the doubt the past couple of years. And so, you know, I'm not really – if Jerome Ford doesn't really end up working out and they try him for a year and then they go with someone else, you know, in 2024, right now I don't – right now I wouldn't be surprised. But, yeah, I'm buying on some potential. Gesicki's athletic profile was elite. Obviously, he's always had that. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, wasn't a fit in Mike McDaniel's system. Now he goes to New England, who's got an offensive coordinator calling the plays now, and Bill O'Brien.
Finally, huh?
Yeah. That was some weirdness last season. But, yeah, Ryan likes to use 2 tight end sets. As you said, Gesicki's been practicing with the receivers, and he's been used as a slot plenty over his career already, even though he hasn't been, you know, real productive. And so it was just deemed unfit because of his blocking. I was kind of watching him last year to see if he would kind of turn into a better blocker in Miami. So I don't really know if that ever really happened or if that's been really been his forte. So if anybody remembers catching this was back in 2020. a tweet from Daniel Jeremiah. Saying, I think you'll enjoy this. We were given this handout during a scout school from my time with the Ravens. Coach Belichick has held true to almost all of this over the years, and it's some guidelines on team building from Bill Belichick himself, and you can't help but look at the tight ends. You could read this whole thing for tight ends, but the underlying part here, don't let the lack of blocking ability eliminate a good player.
Yeah.
Hey. So that seems to have, now this was 30 years ago plus, but that what's that underlined part right there? Doesn't that have Mike Gesicki's name written all over it? So, sometimes when you're trying to, we're all trying to predict the future here with fantasy, and you're just trying to grab whatever you can. So,
yeah.
Well, for me, that's something else I can grab. And to me, in general, any information that might end up being relevant is relevant. So that's kind of, so in another sense, you're never going to know everything that there is to know out there, but you're just trying to hang on to something that might be concrete. And
yeah, I mean, we've seen top 10 tight end performances out of Gesicki in 2020 and 21. I mean, 2021 he had 112 targets. Didn't score many touchdowns, but I mean, he's had 2 700+ yard receiving seasons, and to have 112 targets out of the tight end position is pretty wild. So he's also only 27, and again going into a Belichick and Bill O'Brien run offense in New England. So I think that the fit is decent. I don't think that he could have found a better position. I mean, I'm trying to think of other teams that are really lacking at tight end, but to come in and to be able to perform here in New England will be an easier road than he had it in Miami for sure. And so, yeah, to just bank, like you said, to bank on that talent, a guy 6'6", 250, monster over the middle, plus can play the slot, can stay out wide. Great red zone guy. Should be a weapon for Mac Jones.
And I know
for your team here,
everybody's kind of waiting on that next great slot from the Patriots. Well, Gesicki came out of college with that kind of short area quickness that you want to see out of a slot receiver. That tells you that they have the potential to be a great one.
Right.
So for what that's worth. As far as Darren Waller, it's really just a question of, is he over his hammy?
Yeah, right. It's all health.
Older players got to watch it, and I guess I don't have anything pulled up, but for hamstring injuries in particular, it seems like younger players can get over that a lot easier than older players. And so if he does get over it, it seems like he's top 6 this year.
Yeah, at the very least.
And so Raheem Mostert, how many years has he been considered a 1-year rental in Dynasty? And here we go again, age 31. I know the backfield just got Devon Achane, but it has Jeff Wilson too. But, we'll see. I mean, Mike McDaniel brought him over from San Francisco for a reason and utilized him. The guy had career highs in carries, rushing yards, catches, receiving yards last season. So, we'll see. Maybe it's still more than a 1-year rental for Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, we'll see. I think last year, and he's still one of the fastest backs in the league. There's always value in speedy, shifty running backs, and I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's a terrible trade on either end. I think that there's going to be some very interesting development out of both of those. We'll see how the rosters shake out in the next coming months or so.
And I don't think we mentioned it before, but for each one of these trades, we do have a poll up on @RSJ Dynasty Dive. If you would like to vote, not just on which side you would take in a vacuum, but we have the full rosters also posted there just below the poll. to give you some more context, to give you so you can look at the team and say, okay, not just which side would I take, but which team benefited more from this trade. And I believe we can go on to number 2. And I am sorry, Emery, I did get the order switched around. I did have in my notes that this other trade was going to be first, so I apologize for that.
Oh no, you're all right. You're all right.
But we'll move along here to our next trade involving Emery and 2022 RSJ Dynasty champion Jackson Barrett, or I shortened it to Jay Barrett when I got it up in the visuals here. So the trade is Emery trading Jared Goff to Jay Barrett for Derek Carr, the 205, and Mr. Irrelevant at 412. This one happened on New Year's Eve last season, so I'm not sure exactly what week that was, but the season wasn't quite over at that point.
No, I think it was in the playoffs, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this would go back to our comment last week about the implementation of a trade deadline. And I certainly, in my opinion, feel like I benefited from not having a trade deadline here. So this move, I was able to squeak out a 2nd and a 4th round pick for Jared Goff and still keep a quarterback on the roster. And Jackson got a guy to play in that super flex position. So as you can see down there on the draft picks as well, these are the only 2 picks I'll have in this upcoming draft. And so I had 0 there, 0 for 2023 and only 1 in 2024. I got a little pick happy trading in the previous offseason, and this trade had allowed me to at least bolster the end of the bench a little bit.
Yeah, and if you catch episode 1 and all 2+ hours of it, we spent over an hour and a half just talking about everybody's team roster and categorizing, giving them at whatever stage that we thought those teams were in. We both agreed that Emery is a troubled contender, is an older contender who's in danger of falling off an age cliff at some point. Jackson Barrett we have down as a comfortable contender. He's got all the breathing room. Jackson's team is, I think, a closest thing to a monopoly that you can probably have in a dynasty league. So we call him a comfortable contender. And for Emery as an older contender, this trade was interesting to me for a couple of reasons. For one, here was a tweet I sent out in September of last season. It was at about after week 3, maybe, of the 2022 season. Remember when Jared Goff was a QB1 in the right situation? I remember, and it had all of one like by guess who? Jackson Barrett himself. So I thought that was very interesting when I first saw this trade. But the more interesting part really to me was Jared Goff. He's the X factor. The part of him that is the X factor is how long is he going to stay a starting quarterback in the NFL? That's the big thing for me. That's kind of where it's hard to pick. That's what makes it hardest to pick a winner right now. Because if I could see Jared Goff having a Kirk Cousins-ish type career,
Agreed.
And if he does, then Jackson got himself another long-term QB. If Jared Goff is replaced in the next 2 or 3 years, like Derek Carr might be as well, if they both go out of the starting NFL quarterback conversation at around the same time, then, Emery, you got the better end of this deal. So, we're here trying to predict the future. And if I had to pick one, I would say that Jared Goff is going to remain a starting quarterback for, I'll say 6 or 7 years. I could definitely see happening.
Sure.
Was that kind of part of the thought process when you made this trade? Is kind of, there's like people who will say don't like plan for more than a year down the road in Dynasty, but it's hard for me to really stick to that like religiously. I do think about players for the long term, like all the time.
Right.
So how much did that possibility of a long starting career for Goff went into your decision here?
So a lot of it actually hinged on Derek Carr, just because this was, I believe, pre-week 17, where he was benched and didn't start that last game or two. Was away from the facilities in Vegas, and his tenure with the Raiders was over. And so I believe I had just gotten bumped out of the first round of the playoffs, and then I wasn't playing for anything after that. And so to pick up a quarterback, or to flip a quarterback for 2 more picks, was mainly what I was looking for. I always in the back of my mind that Jared Goff had the potential at least to stick around in Detroit, especially if they expand on the success they had last season. And with adding Gibbs, it gives another aspect to their offense. Hopefully, Jameson Williams will return to the field and stop betting on games or hurting himself. That would be nice. So it's mainly also their defense is getting better. Aiden Hutchinson had a phenomenal rookie season. That team is looking to be more complete. And if Goff continues to play like he played last year, then he'll keep his job and stick around. I was just more hoping to see if I could get some more assets, some more picks. Like I said, bolster a little bit of that bench. And have more trade bargaining chips. So that was the process that I had, at least. It was good because I could milk. I was really trying to get into the first round, but I don't think Jackson would have flipped a first rounder for a quarterback just to win 1 game or 2 games in the playoffs there. But I could get a second and a fourth. So not the worst,
And we will see how it turns out. On Twitter at RSJ Dynasty Dive, you can take a vote on the poll that has this trade up there, and you can vote not just on which side you would take in a vacuum, but which team benefited more from this trade. And on Twitter, you have the full rosters on here. You'll have visuals like this to check out Emery's bench depth, and then Jackson's bench depth, which sometimes bench depth doesn't matter. For Jackson, as you can see, Goff, he doesn't need to really rely on going into 2023, and he's got plenty of receiver depth. So, no 2023 draft picks, no first rounder in 2024. All things to consider when you're trying to figure out, in this situation, if I were this team or that team, whose team benefited more. So I believe trade talk's out of the way.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say on the Twitter polls.
Without further ado, we have a RSJ Dynasty has a rookie draft of their own coming up on Monday. And so our own CJ, the silent assassin, is sitting there with the 101 in a clear rebuilding situation. He has admitted as much. And so, genuine, I think basically the consensus is that Bijan Robinson is the 101. So what kind of situation would there be where Bijan might not be the 101? CJ's roster, as you will see, I didn't put it in the right order in the slides here, so I don't want to expose any information that I shouldn't yet. You will get a full look at CJ's roster here in a bit, but his roster, I believe, very much resembles a more common rebuilding roster. And by that, what I mean is, basically, if you're not going Bijan Robinson, then you're very, very likely going with one of the top 3 QBs in this rookie draft. So it's really down to kind of quarterback, a running back at Bijan Robinson. And so CJ's QB2 currently is Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a guy who is likes to hover around that low end QB2, some high-end QB3 action, and kind of the type of quarterback you would really probably expect to see on a lot of rebuilding rosters. And has a nice RB1 in Najee Harris, but right now, technically, the guy's RB2 is Chuba Hubbard of the Panthers. In case you forgot, it might be easy to forget. The guy was a very impressive RB53 last season.
Absolutely.
So, first thought, you going into the draft, and those are your QB2 and RB2s. You take Bijan, you got Najee and Bijan as your running back room set, right? But even CJ has admitted that this rebuild is going to go into 2024. So then the question there becomes, now if you take Bijan, how much are you going to end up hurting your 2024 draft capital if you take Bijan Robinson rather than your choice of any quarterback in this rookie class? Running backs typically take the least amount of time to get acclimated to the league and start producing at a high level. Sometimes quarterbacks take time. Patrick Mahomes, he didn't start until the last week of his rookie season. So what I did was I took some players and kind of made a list, first starting with quarterbacks who came into their rookie seasons and were more or less the guy. Generally high drafted guys who would start double-digit games in their rookie season. So, as we can see, right here, I will maximize this. So, of QBs who played at least 5 games, all QBs who have played at least 5 games, I listed the rookie QBs who started at least 10 games. So, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, T-Law, Daniel Jones, Dak, Carson Wentz, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray. Those are the guys that made my list. I think I might not have did 2015. I think I went back to about 2016. And so you're looking at the numbers here, a lot of 17 points per game kind of thing. Now this is a league that is 4-point passing touchdowns, which is what RSJ Dynasty is. Couple outliers here. Wentz, 13.3 points per game. Justin Herbert went off after lung puncture gate happened, and Tyrod Taylor was out. He ended up going for 22.9 points per game. The next closest was Kyler at 18.6. So out of this list, we have 16.61 points per game. Last season, Jimmy G went for 15.3 points per game. So the average is a 1.36 point improvement. Now, take into account the player that is already on a team for a reason that you will see here. Running backs kind of did the same thing, went with highly drafted guys, even though, a higher draft selection wasn't, the only thing that was dependent here. But basically, whoever came in and was the guy their rookie season or most of their rookie season. This includes Zeke, Barkley, Todd Gurley, Breece Hall, Najee Harris, Ken Walker, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, and Kareem Hunt. Went back to 2015 on this. 2017 was a particularly tough year to know where to draw the line because you have Fournette, 4th overall pick. McCaffrey was 8th overall pick. Then you had Dalvin Cook, who only played 4 games, so I didn't include him. You had Joe Mixon, who shared a lot of the work with Giovanni Bernard, so I didn't include him. I have Josh Jacobs here listed as borderline because he was actually sharing a good amount of work with DeAndre Washington, losing some more passing down work to Jalen Richard, but he had enough of a majority that I felt comfortable putting him on here. And then Kareem Hunt was a 3rd-round pick, but he walked into Kansas City and he was the guy.
And blew up.
Yeah. So he's on this list. So as you can see, by the average here, we had 16.61 points per game for quarterbacks on average, rookie quarterbacks who come in and they're the guy their rookie season. 16.06 points per game for running backs in that same situation. So quarterbacks actually score a little more. But if you take CJ's RB2 into account, Chuba Hubbard, a healthy 5.8 points per game last season. So that's a 10.26 point improvement. If you took the average, now this is just the average, Bijan Robinson could definitely do more than the 16.06 points per game. You got Arthur Smith, who basically I think he thinks he just got his next Derrick Henry. That Falcons O-line has improved over the last few years, so that thing's gotten solid. And Tyler Algier had one of the quietest 1,000-yard rushing seasons that you could really have last season. Now you go from a 5th-round pick in Algier to Bijan Robinson. It's hard to see him splitting a whole lot of work in that backfield. So, 16.06 points.
Yeah, he's going to get 20 touches a game.
Yeah. So, you could just, the guy could be, I could see Barkley this year at 21.3 points per game. And this is half PPR too. So I know in PPR, Barkley got a bunch of receiving work because of, it was like elderly Eli Manning checking down a lot Barkley's rookie year. But, why not? I know Bijan, I don't think he got a whole lot of receiving work with Texas, but, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me typically. I don't really have any numbers in my head or what kind of correlation college receiving work does for the pros, but I don't think you can rule it out just because a guy didn't have a whole lot of receiving volume in college. So what do I got here? The difference between the differences. So if you got the 10.26 point difference with running backs. You got the 1.36 point difference to upgrade from Jimmy G at quarterback. If you take a quarterback at the 101. So that comes out to an 8.9 point per game difference. Obviously, things are case by case with most things in life. Definitely the same in Dynasty. Got to be careful not to make blanket statements out here. All right. That's understood. If we take this back to the 2022 season for RSJ Dynasty, as far as how many points per game each team scored, you see CJ down there getting his 101 taken care of at 68.51 points per game. If you take that 8.9 points, add to the 68, you get 77.41 points per game, which makes him 3rd to last in the 2022 season. I know we're talking about 2023. So that's just another thing to kind of reference here. The big thing for me going into 2023, and here's the deciding factor for me is if we're going off a case-by-case basis, in our league situation, we talked about it in episode 1, Zeno basically doesn't have a quarterback. Not only does he not have a quarterback, he traded out of the 102.
Yeah.
So he is the clear front runner for the 2024 101. Besides that, it's kind of a toss-up. Realistically, CJ could get the 102 next year, but he also has 3 more picks in the 1st and 2nd round. I believe he has a 112, the 201, and the 208 or something like that. So he's going to get better, regardless with these picks. But in this situation, because there isn't a real clear danger to how much draft capital you're going to lose by taking Bijan Robinson over one of the quarterbacks at 101, I still have CJ taking Bijan Robinson at that spot. Now your league might be different. If you have a handful of teams that are all going to be in the running for the 101 next year, maybe you take a quarterback that you like there. You have your choice, or maybe, and I think this is uncommon, maybe your dynasty league doesn't have that much parity right now. Maybe they're a very close-knit group, a lot closer-knit group than, say, RSJ Dynasty was last season as far as points per game, where we're taking Bijan over a quarterback could potentially send you down 5 or 6 spots next season. In this case, there's no clear path for me about really hurting draft capital for CJ to take Bijan and replace Chuba Hubbard with Bijan Robinson. What do you have to say? I had a thought and I lost it. Maybe I'll get it back here.
No, you're all right. In my mind, the 101 is far too valuable to give up and take a quarterback. To skip over a generational Saquon Barkley type running back to take a quarterback. You'd have so much more value trading that pick. If you wanted to flip your rebuild around, get another pick for next year and a legit guy. I mean, I'm just looking at the dynasty rankings on Keep Trade Cut. I mean, it gives a nice round number for every player. Bijan Robinson is the 8th overall player in the entirety of in dynasty football compared to on Keep Trade Cut. At 7,839 points. Points don't matter. The next best is Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's also a quarterback on CJ's roster, correct? So,
yeah, that's his QB1.
Right, and so that would be a comparable trade. Someone like Keep Trade Cut would say Bijan Robinson could get traded for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Herbert at the value that they have, and that value is, like I said, a top 10 player in fantasy football. If you didn't want to take Bijan, if you didn't think your team was set up for it, and you were gonna run him into the dirt on a what is it, a 5-9 team or something like that, why you would have to try to flip that. I wouldn't. I think it would be absolutely insane to take a quarterback over Bijan if you didn't think that if based solely on the fit not being correct. I think that if you didn't want to roster him, if your team wasn't set up to win, right, or you're looking forward to rebuilding still and competing in 2025, you'd have to trade the pick. And I mean, there are guys with similar pricings on Keep Trade Cut. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown are all the next wide receivers up there behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, obviously, but those guys have lesser value. Maybe you could pick one of them up and a first-round pick next year. You could solidify a young stud wide receiver, get another pick next year, and be really bad next year. So I don't see a world where a quarterback's taken over Bijan based solely on team like roster construction.
Yeah, if there was like a Trevor Lawrence in this draft, which you can see here, he had the worst points per game out of these rookie quarterbacks on this list, 12.7 points per game. That was the Urban Meyer year, so obviously, wow with that year.
Yeah.
But none of the quarterbacks coming out are getting talked about in any way like Trevor Lawrence. So if it were different, if say a T-Law kind of prospect at quarterback was here, then I think this is very much more now a discussion of because obviously anyone who's used a trade calculator, you could see the picks, the value of draft picks as you go down from the 101, the gap between them in value decreases. So when we talk about high-end first round, the closer you are to 101 is just that much more valuable It's 100% as valuable as the gap between the next two picks below it, plus some more. And that gap only becomes bigger as you get closer to the 101. So, in future situations, it's something to definitely keep in mind. Ideally, dream scenario, if you're a rebuilder, you want Bijan Robinson to be the last piece you get so your team can hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So it's not, obviously it's not a question if you're trying to end your rebuild with this rookie draft. But since any information that might end up being relevant is relevant, this is a topic that here we both agreed Bijan Robinson is still the pick, but
yes,
you saw the point per game difference in this particular situation. If you're replacing, a horrible RB2, 10.26 point improvement, kind of, projected here for replacing Chuba with Bijan as compared to a 1.36 point difference by going from your choice of rookie quarterback over Jimmy G. That 8.9 point per game difference is enough to stop and think. Any year that you might have the 101, but any year that your league mate has the 101, and it gives you kind of a talking point if you're trying to get up there and get the 101 from that team. You have something else to talk about, something in your back pocket to use as I think a very legitimate talking point. So that's, to me, the main takeaway here. So as we start off our 2023 first round rookie mock draft here on episode 2 of the RSJ Dynasty Dive, we both have CJ still taking Bijan Robinson with the first pick.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what happens. I think he's going to do that. And I think his team's going to get better. I believe we had a difference because he does have that 111. He does have another first round pick in the back of the draft, 111, and so there are other needs to be filled. Obviously, being the 101, but Bijan's the pick here. That's what he's going to take. And I believe we also agree on the next pick.
Yeah. So when I mentioned that Xenos, who is a rebuilder, who is sans a QB, he also traded out of the 102, and he traded it to me. In episode 1, we went over this. He traded the 102 to yours truly for Jalen Waddle. That's another poll that's still up, although I think it's closed now, on at RSJ Dynasty Dive on Twitter. So here I sit. So I gave myself a grade of neutral middler with this team. I believe you called me a promising middler.
Yeah,
so
right.
that's kind of where the thought process is here. Looking at this particular team, your first thought, what would a team looking like this do at the 102? If you didn't know me, if you never met me, what are you thinking?
I think it really depends on your thought process on Jordan Love. Like, is Green Bay all in there? Is he going to be able to play as a top 15 quarterback with the surrounding cast that he has? He has a aging lead running back and then 2 second-year wide receivers. I don't know if that's the recipe for success in a town that is known for having a top quarterback every year, a team that always plans on winning. I don't know if that's the recipe. That's the right angle to be taking there. And so I would honestly think that it's 102 comes down to your belief in Jordan Love, or it could come down as a trade piece. But then if you did like Jordan Love, say you were like, yes, I do think he's going to be a top 15 guy this year, then you have the option to go out and take JSN and add to a really young, really promising wide receiver room, and you could then go and have just the same. You could have Hollywood, Tony, Traylon Burks, and JSN be your wide receivers for the next 10 years. It's I think if I was just looking at this team in a vacuum, it would come down to the interest and the faith you have in Jordan Love.
So, just reading Toon's comment. It took me. I had to get back. I didn't know if he was talking about us. No, he's talking about some other things he's doing while he's listening here. So, Jordan Love, it's such an extremely small sample size we have, but I am buying into it. So it can't gloss over just how much time Aaron Rodgers got to get used to playing in Green Bay. Basically sat on the bench for 3 years, became a starting quarterback his fourth year, and in that fourth year, team went 6-10, 63.6 completion percentage, 28 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, still threw for over 4,000 yards. But yeah, I mean the team wasn't successful that first year, and I really don't know, how much crap he got for that. But second year as a starter, when things got rolling, he was 11-5, and things kind of went from there. So that first year, Aaron Rodgers wasn't a winner. His first year as a starting quarterback, which was his fourth year, in the NFL. Could definitely see Jordan Love taking that same kind of trajectory.
Yeah, those stats you brought up sound about right for a projection on Jordan Love coming into this year. Maybe not 4,000 yards, but 28, 13, 15 28 touchdowns, 13 to 15 interceptions.
Yeah, I don't know. Can't remember who Aaron Rodgers' receivers were at the time, but he came in having receivers, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, those were like the end of the Donald Driver era, right?
I think so. Was Greg Jennings there?
Greg Jennings, yeah. The end of that, the sort of the intro. Jordy Nelson wasn't there yet, but I think it was the back half of the Driver Jennings teams. Far better than what Jordan Love is throwing to right now.
Yeah, right now. This was Jordan Love was one player I traded for in the offseason here, and it was planning on being a long-term investment. Not really I'll get what I'll take from him for 2023. But as I said in episode 1, I watched 3 other contending teams in Roto Street Journal Dynasty League last season bolster their 2023 rosters, 2 of them for the short term. And I took my aging roster and I said, I'm going to retool. Where I see value, I'm going to get younger. And so I haven't forsaken 2023, but against the advice of however many dynasty analysts out there who would say, don't, maybe even just go for 1 year, plan ahead for 1 year in dynasty, don't get too caught up in the long term. I got caught up in the long term with this team. So, I'd like to hang on to Jordan Love and see what he does for a few years at least. We'll see what happens. I think I might have made the most trades out of anybody so far in RSJ Dynasty. But you got Jahmyr Gibbs as an option to go along with already maybe even this year. This could possibly be, what the best 1, 2, 3 at running back. If Javonte gets the work and Breece Hall, comes back into form, maybe not right off the bat, but it's Breece Hall. If he comes back into form halfway through the season, then he's sitting in my, messing with Josh Jacobs that can have a competition about who's going to be better the last half of the year, sure. So I would think, JSN is probably a little high to think about at number 2, even though I traded a receiver for this 102. So it could go, receiver gone to draft another receiver, but Jalen Waddle's still young. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe there's a scenario where somebody might do that, but this is very much a ceiling chasing roster. And when I look at the quarterback that I plan on taking at the 102 this coming Monday, he's a project, but I have seen and heard enough to be optimistic that he can get over the more raw aspects of his game. And I know we're like, this is still OTA stage, so it's weird to say I've seen and heard enough. But waiting till somebody succeeds to try to go get them is too late. You gotta get them before they start succeeding, really. Quintessential like buy low philosophy there. So I decided to pull the trigger and take Anthony Richardson with 102, assuming CJ doesn't take him.
Which again, we doubt he will.
Mm-hmm. You like the pick 6 days ahead at 102 there?
Yeah, if you're trading 102 last or however long ago it was, then you're definitely eyeballing AR. I think that you hit the nail on the head. You're a ceiling chasing team, and if you get 3 or 4 of your guys hit the ceiling, then you're going to be moving out of that middling sort of position we both thought your roster was in currently. Yeah, I think that this is the pick, especially with the moves that we talked about earlier. This is the pick.
And I still think Daniel Jones has his better days are ahead of him. So a core of Daniel Jones, Jordan Love, and Anthony Richardson may mean that I don't have to think about quarterback for a long time.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it would be a nice luxury to have as much as the rest of us, try to get to that all enviable spot of a comfortable contender in a dynasty league. So we can move along here. Next up, the man with the 103 is D-Lo. That is Anthony DiLorenzo. He writes a lot of the culture pieces for RSJ. He inherited his team in the 2022 offseason from Truth, and didn't inherit a very good situation, really at all. And so he did a little bit of work. Last year, he picked up Rashad White, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson to add to this roster. Tyquan Thornton might be a thing.
Could be.
As we hear some stuff coming out of the Patriots camp.
Yeah, another Twitter darling that people are enjoying seeing at camp this last couple of weeks.
Mac Jones, his rough relationship with Bill Belichick might be getting a lot better, as I guess just because Bill O'Brien's calling the plays. I'm not sure.
Yeah, here's hoping. We both have the same idea here too. I think that I'm glad that you agree with me on the second quarterback off the board, who it should be at least.
Yeah. So I think just it's better. For one, you got Davis Mills as the quarterback in Houston before C.J. Stroud got there. In Carolina, you have Andy Dalton, before Bryce Young got there. And then the Panthers basically outright saying that, Andy Dalton's gonna start off the season. I haven't kept up enough to know if that's really still the language coming out of there.
Yeah, I don't know either.
We've already heard that Stroud is just like miles ahead of Davis Mills. So the path to week 1 starting for one thing seems easier for CJ Stroud. Ohio State quarterbacks are still an enigma, although there's still a lot of optimism about Justin Fields bucking the trend of OSU quarterbacks. Right now, it sounds like, I don't see any reason that Stroud, other than what his Wonderlic score, what was that?
It was what, like the S2 test
Yeah,
or
the
whatever.
S2 test. I mean, if Stroud ends up being a bust, we're going to have to start paying a lot more attention to that S2 score, I guess. But
Yes.
yeah, so the general vibe goes with Stroud right now, I think.
Yeah.
Even
I think that's the right
past,
pick too.
you have Bryce Young, who's 5'10". I think he's the what is he? He's the lightest quarterback that's been a first round pick or something, or a first overall pick, something like that. I know his size is a big concern for him, and I'd say it's legit enough.
Yeah,
That
he looks tiny. He looks really
yeah,
small.
that all things considered, I'm going C.J. Stroud here for D'Lo.
Yeah, agreed. That's the pick. This next one, however, we disagree.
There you go. There's your first three. All right, our first disagreement. So here's a this is a fun team, I think, because transferred from tailback Tino shortly after the 2022 season ended. They went to Sean Keegs, another RSJ staffer, and you see has been kind of hanging along that 4-10, 5-9 area. And Tino, during the playoffs last season, which he was out, but Jay Barrett was in, and Tino traded Austin Eckler for the 104 to Jay Barrett during the playoffs last season. So Tino was already starting to blow this thing up before transferring over to Sean Keegs. And when Sean Keegs got it, he said, "I'm not blowing this thing up. I want to make a team." So really, the only running back when Keegs got it on this roster was Cam Akers, but he had a solid amount of wide receiver depth still. So he helped use that to get Miles Sanders. He got Antonio Gibson in a trade also to give himself a legit running back room. And so he's got quarterbacks right now of Kyler Murray, Desmond Ridder, and Sam Howell. Ridder and Howell looking to start week one. Kyler Murray coming off ACL. Not sure exactly when he'll be back, right? But until then, in one of the least injured positions in the NFL at quarterback, you have Howell and Ridder, who you could use to hold it down if you wanted to. And so for me, it's really that simple. I think Keegs, from what he has kind of said in our league chat about fielding a team right here, I think he wants to add even more to this running back room, which means I have him taking Jahmyr Gibbs.
And I had him taking Bryce Young. I do follow your reasoning. I'm not super sold on Ridder. I liked him out of college. I liked the ability he had to just like to be on time and to be super accurate with his passing. But I lean Bryce Young here because if he is the future of the Carolina Panthers, having Kyler Murray and Bryce Young too mobile enough. I mean, Kyler's more mobile than Young is, but having two mobile quarterbacks, it's the new wave of fantasy football, having that dual threat guy. Kyler is looking. The last report that I saw is that he was ahead of schedule, and so maybe there's some optimism he's ready by like week 2, week 3, but probably mid-season is the call there. But having him back, say Howell and Ridder, or any combination of Howell, Ridder, and Bryce Young get you to 3-3. You get Kyler back, then you try to squeak into the playoffs there. And if his goal is to become and stay competitive, I think quarterback's this spot here.
Well,
I don't know if I don't know if he'll be able to get to be in a position to take a quarterback like this, like a top 3 dynasty quarterback in the draft. If he's planning on being competitive, I don't know how easy it will be for him to find another quarterback of this, at least with this draft capital.
I think in my own mind, now I know Sean Case has already kind of announced that he's like a more of a win now kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And I think Bryce Young has enough bust potential that if you're looking to win now, and out of the top 3 quarterbacks, you're left with Bryce Young or taking a guy like Gibbs. If your mentality is win now, I feel like you're taking Gibbs. Just for kind of the like, I don't know like how much the Lions front office really thought of DeAndre Swift, but man, they were excited to replace Swift with Jahmyr Gibbs. So like, you know, if Gibbs comes in and a Swift plus, like, and you're trying to win now, I feel like it's going to be too tempting.
I definitely see your logic there, and I could agree with that. I don't mind either pick. I like both. My main thought was the draft capital. If he's, again, like we said, trying to be competitive year in, year out, when are you going to have the ability to take a top 3 quarterback in a rookie draft?
And we shall see. Now, this is the first spot where me and Emery are deviating on what we think is going to happen in the rookie draft. So for both of us and for anyone watching this Monday, my bad, it's not live streamed this Monday. So it'll be released later, but we're having it this Monday. So
we could go over it on the Tuesday show next week.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
I haven't really known what the best route is to go there. So we'll see.
But we will have an update for you all pre next week's episode on the draft.
Next up, we have Papa Tunes. Papa Tunes is he was a rebuilder last year. I think we both kind of had him as a rebuilder this year. Still, just trying to bolster this roster after some bad luck after the 2021 startup draft. So the value that Tunes got in last year's draft, I think the vast majority of the other drafters here in our RSJ Dynasty liked the kind of picks he was making. You know, some of them were misses, which you're going to have, because we were talking about, like David Bell, Jalen Tolbert. We thought they were good value picks at the time, even though, who knows if they're going to be relevant again, at least those two guys. But, Drake London, Damian Pierce,
George
Pickens, a good pickup. Cade Otton still might be a good pickup, but tight ends you gotta usually wait forever.
Yeah.
With some exceptions, but so he's sitting here. If the draft goes the way I kind of assume it will, then you have Bryce Young and JSN available, who I think are the options there at 1-5. If it goes the way Emery thinks it will, then Tunes has Gibbs and JSN.
Yeah.
So you look at this roster. What's interesting here is Tunes has the 111 also. He has the 111 and he has Ryan Tannehill. And the 111 is right about where it might probably a little earlier than people tend to be picking Will Levis. So
that was my thought process.
So this is something to think about with Tunes' team. You look at the 5th pick, and assuming one of the top 3 quarterbacks are still there, you have to ask yourself, is he going to take one, or is he going to wait to take Will Levis, who, looks like, as far as right now, at this moment, looks like the guy who will take over for Ryan Tannehill You got 2 starting running backs, Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Pierce. Outside of that,
That's what. Yeah, there's 2 starting running backs on this roster.
to go along with some pretty solid wide receiver depth.
Absolutely, yeah. We talked about that a lot last week, but yeah, this team needs running backs, and if at 104 Young comes off the board, then I think it's a no-brainer that Gibbs is taking it. This part, 104, 105 are going to be the first real interesting part of this draft here. I think that the value really is a couple different tiers in this draft. I mean, obviously Bijan's a tier of his own, and then you have the QBs and how that's going to shake out there. It all comes down to how the 104, how Keegs goes about evaluating Young, who we're all assuming will be the last QB off there. It's going to be interesting to see. This is the first sort of break in the ideology of the lineup of people here.
Yeah. So, but to be fair, I mentioned that we thought Tunes did really well with the picks he had in last year's rookie draft. So he seemed to have a good beat on best player available. So you got JSN there, even though you've got some solid receiving depth right now. Maybe he goes straight value, and if he thinks JSN's the guy, it's going to be hard to disagree with him. Even though with Tyler Lockett, who still looks like he's still 100%, not getting too old yet. The immediate fantasy relevance is kind of hard to see at the moment, but the idea is that the future of the Seattle receiver room is JSN and DK.
Yeah.
But
and again, to go back to the capital position, Tunes is in a decent spot here. I don't remember exactly where we had him ranked. I think I was a little higher on him than you were. But when do you get a chance to be at the 105 and take a guy like JSN or take a guy like Gibbs? Those sort of opportunities, if you're hoping to be a contender year in and year out down the line, those opportunities don't happen. So you're right. He could take best available option here, who I believe is JSN. The Ohio State guys, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, said that he was better than both of them, and they are two of the best young or second year receivers in the league right now. So we shall see. Yeah, certainly no better than most of us doing this talking here. But yeah, that's our first disagreement, and I think we are in agreement that the guy we just brought up, JSN, will go at number 6 after Tunes.
Yep. So a little flip flop. Since I have Gibbs going to Keegs, I do like Bryce Young going to Tunes, which is might do a little bit of foreshadowing to what I think Tunes will do at 111, since he takes a quarterback who's not named Will Levis, and if Tunes takes Bryce Young, that really solidifies the fact that he doesn't have to rely on taking Will Levis, which is a position I don't think anybody wants to be in.
I agree with you.
This was, and I didn't mention with Sean Keegs, but before he traded for Miles Sanders and Antonio Gibson during the offseason, his only running back was Cam Akers, and while that was the case, I had Keegs as pretty much a lock to take Gibbs at the number 4. So he had trading for a couple running backs really opened up flexibility, even though I still haven't taken Gibbs. That kind of thing for, say what you want about maybe the kind of value or the kind of team that Keegs will be sporting. Maybe it doesn't quite look like a contender, but trading for a couple running backs to fill out that running back room opened up flexibility to take best player available at the 1-4. Next up, Matt Duckworth, the Duck, the 2021 champion. Had a little bit of a down year last year. We'll see what happens. We see kind of the roster that's going on here. And here's a guy who drafted A.J. Brown and traded him away. And here's a guy who drafted CeeDee Lamb and traded him away. Is that a common theme? We'll see as time goes on. But me and Emery are in agreement. We've said this before that the top 6, Bijan, AR, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, no matter what order you put them in, these are the top 6 picks.
Right.
And so right off the bat, we both have JSN as the guy left over in our mock draft. So cat's out of the bag. We have Duck taking Jackson Smith-Njigba at the 106 to add to this wide receiver room that's already got a little bit of depth. But, he's sitting there clearly a tier down after you get past him, right? So you kind of got to take him if he's there.
You do. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. And I can only imagine Duck would love to take this guy, have him on this roster. Fill out, get your third starting wide receiver, and then deal with everything else later. I think it's the most no-brainer of pick.
It's really kind of a nice spot because if Gibbs is left over there, great. If one of the QBs is left over there,
even better.
Great.
You can get rid of Matt Stafford. Yeah.
So pretty simple there. Next up is Jimbo, who traded for the 107 in exchange for Miles Sanders and the 310 to Keys. This was a interesting trade that we talked about last episode. I thought it was real interesting because if you told me the teams making this trade, I would have said that their roles were that the teams were flipped. But so you have here Miles Sanders is gone. He would have been the youngest starting running back on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Jimbo's team is old. It's getting there. It's probably the oldest contender. I think it's pretty clear. So that's the kind of situation going on with Jimbo's team. And so to trade for the 107 is very interesting because once we get past the top 6, I feel like there's really not a lock.
No, there isn't. And it goes to show the list that we have coming up to talk about. We have 2 different evaluations for this position. I personally, my projection was taking Jordan Addison in Minnesota. I think he's the second best receiver in this class. I think that it's not – maybe people will argue that the Minnesota fit isn't great, but he's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage. He's a great route runner. Bigger guy, well, not huge, but bigger, and will play great next to Justin Jefferson and make that offense. We don't know what's going to happen with Dalvin Cook. We don't know what's going to happen with Alexander Mattison up there in Minnesota. And so I think Addison should be the second pick, the second wide receiver taken here. You had a completely different idea.
Yeah, so if TJ Hockenson isn't in Minnesota, I'm thinking of things differently as far as that offense and Addison's fit. I think volume is king. And with the 107, I feel like you're not like a win now player would be nice in Jimbo's situation, clearly, but I don't think you got to get too caught up in that. You got to think long term and who you think has the best shot to the best long term shot. And it's kind of I don't really. So these next 3 picks are going to fall right in line with how the NFL draft went. As far as receivers, you had that group of receivers go. JSN, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, all going right next to each other. And a lot of, I think, mock drafts and stuff, they're all bunched together too, particularly the 3 not named JSN. And so there's a danger there about relying too much on like draft capital and
right.
what other teams think of a guy like it's not gonna like the value is not gonna stay parallel to where they got drafted. Like it does things don't work out like that. There's gonna be some fall off somewhere, I would think. And so you're trying to look at these receivers that are left over, and think about who has the best long-term prospects. As short as a year ago, I'm not touching any wide receiver two on the Ravens.
No.
But today, with words coming out of how Ravens camp is going with Todd Monken as OC, with the Ravens looking to air it out more than they have in who knows how long.
Yeah. Good riddance, Greg Roman.
I've got Zay Flowers as the pick. I think he has a shot to be, he might not be the alpha in Baltimore, but if anybody, I think he's got the best shot just because I'm not a full believer yet in Quentin Johnston, if he's going to end up being that guy. I know he's got the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I have question marks with him. So, could easily be wrong about how I think of these receivers. I'm notoriously bad at drafting receivers in my redraft leagues. I feel like sometimes I imagine like what if the RSJ staff was NBA Jam characters all pixelated on the screen and we got our ratings below our picture. I would be like trades 8, free agency 7, drafting 3. Like for some reason that's my Achilles heel, and so particularly with receivers. So don't take any of this as like trash talking Quentin Johnston or whatever. Take it definitely with a grain of salt. Sure. About what I say about receivers. But I just my first impressions are that Zay Flowers has the best shot at long-term volume, especially now that the Ravens are looking to be changing their philosophy in a big way on offense.
That being said, the next guy we both agreed on will be Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, so here is Zenos. Zenos traded out of the 1-2 to get Waddle. Mm-hmm. And so now you have a team that's kind of basically CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, and Waddle. And, maybe Dillon or whatever. But he's got the 108, and he's got a few second-round picks as well to see what he can add to this team. And I think he's still very much in a best player available situation. He clearly showed as much that he's not really concerned about 2023 by trading out of the 102. So, I hate to be so cliche to think that how things are going to turn out in the NFL and in fantasy are based on draft capital and this chunk of receivers that went together in the first round in the NFL draft. But here I am going Quentin Johnston, the guy who I think is the third best out of the 4 that were in that NFL draft first round group. And maybe not even like, again, as far as how well I think he'll do long term, as far as talent, for better or worse, I got questions about Quentin Johnston and if he'll be able to fill out any an alpha role for the Chargers. I think
he's certainly going to get wrong. Yeah, you said that he's certainly going to get the opportunity. Keenan Allen is 30,
32 or 33.
Yeah. He's up there. Mike Williams is 28, and so he's going to have the opportunity to ride out his rookie deal with a superstar quarterback in Justin Herbert, and I think that's the plan in LA. I keep wanting to say San Diego, but earlier when we were talking about Derek Carr, I almost said Las Vegas Raiders. I almost said Oakland Raiders because
it's only right.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, QJ's the pick here.
Next up, Thaw Wolf, fearless leader. I kind of gave it away. Who I kind of think is going here, or you know what? Maybe I didn't. let me rephrase that here. So Wolf has 109 and 110. That's nice to have flexibility like that in the draft. I really don't mind being at the end of a snake and redraft, just because I like options, you know.
Yeah, doubling up, being able to take that first quarterback, first tight end, or something like that is always great when you can hit the end of that run there.
So, I mean, this guy's team is better than the 7-7s he's gotten over the past couple of years. He did end up winning the third place game last year, and I think he's in a great spot to continue being successful with Tony Pollard. Looking like he's good. They got Dallas is back talking with Zeke again, but it's kind of like I think he's the RB1, right? Even if Zeke comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a little older at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is 39, Cousins is 34. You got Lance, who might end up getting his the starting job there in San Francisco still.
Yeah, they like him. They like him in camp. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see how that plays out long term. But as far as 23 goes, some solid depth. As you see, he's just picked up Waller and Raheem Mostert. Got more instant depth, I guess. So I think flexibility is the name of the game here. And so what I kind of thought was, I think Wolf likes the guy we'll talk about at 110, but I'm not trying to say at all that Jordan Addison isn't talented, that he can't be better than Quentin Johnston,
right,
or Zay Flowers long term. But I think the biggest thing for me was TJ Hockenson being in Minnesota now, and volume is king. So I think the Vikings are committed to TJ Hockenson long term. So, Addison could be very efficient with his touches, but I mean, how much volume are you going to take away from Justin Jefferson? Like, it doesn't matter if Addison's there or not. Jefferson can succeed. So
absolutely, yeah.
I don't know. Jefferson's success doesn't really seem to hinge too much on who is in that wide receiver 2 spot. So I don't. He's coming in as an Adam Thielen replacement, and I don't really know that he's ever. I don't know when he's ever going to have a chance to succeed like Thielen, just because Justin Jefferson has turned out to be. He's just better than Diggs, I guess. I mean, Diggs is really good, and Jefferson's still like a tier above him.
Still
and
better,
so
yeah.
Yeah, so I got Addison going here. The last of the 4 kind of grouped up first round NFL draft wide receivers, and the big thing is just volume for me.
Yeah, and I had Flowers going for the same thing that you talked about, that the Ravens hope that they are getting away from. I don't want to trust the Ravens wide receiver yet. I would have to wait and see what goes on this offseason and into the start of preseason, that sort of thing. I don't want to deal with the Ravens wide receiver. These 2 guys, I know we have the same guy next, but to me, Zay Flowers seems like a guy that Wolf will be all over. Like his diamond in the rough, Mm-hmm. I think that's it. The play style, being a Boston College guy, it seems just like that would be a guy Wolf would fawn over.
Yeah, I guess normally maybe I would have Ravens offense trust issues with the kind of the language that's coming out of there. But for some reason, I really don't this year. And I mean, how can you not trust when Mark Andrews is out here saying Lamar Jackson's balls are amazing?
Right? Yeah, that's big trust.
Big trust.
Yeah.
And what would really help though? I don't want to know whose balls I think. I want to know whose balls Mark Andrews thinks aren't amazing. That's better news to me, really.
Absolutely right. That's some juiciness right there.
But as you can see, he's got the 110.
Yep.
And I think who I have at 110, same guy you have at 110. I think it's a guy that Wolf naturally would be high on
Yeah,
already.
it's a sexy pick in Wolf size.
Yeah, and I think it's a little convenient that he has, as of a couple weeks ago, Raheem Mostert on his roster. It's you got Jeff Wilson still there in Miami, but there is a little bit of logic here in thinking, hey, when Raheem Mostert fades away, maybe Devon A-Chain steps in to the gap that Mostert has left.
Yeah, this is a classic Wolf pick, and I think we can all see this one coming. I think that A-Chain is the third running back off the board in most drafts. Mm-hmm. I think that this is the spot for it.
Not. I guess I didn't have his team up. I got it in the wrong order. Whatever. Ignore that. Next up is that's why I didn't, because it's Papa Tunes, who has his second first round pick at the 111. I already had him taking Bryce Young at 105. Emery has him taking Jahmyr Gibbs, and my big thing about him taking Bryce Young is that he didn't have to rely on Will Levis in any way, shape, or form for his roster, even though Will Levis will still be available. Tunes has Ryan Tannehill as his QB2, so there is a little bit of logic in taking Levis as Tannehill's presumed replacement. But neither of us, I can't remember your pick, but neither of us have him taking Will Levis, do we? Or do you?
In 11 right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, because I had Teagues taking Bryce Young ahead of Gibbs. I think that is dream scenario for Tunes right here. I think that if he can just take Gibbs, best available right there, and then Levis is the pick if he doesn't get Young.
See, to me, if Levis is there, and you're thinking about, sweet, I got Tannehill, I got Levis to step right in when Tannehill falls off. I don't like having to rely on that.
See, I don't either, but I think if things play out the way I mocked things with Young going ahead and at 104. I think this is just the no-brainer. I think you have to draft positionally there. You have Charbonnet.
I do.
Who people were really high on before the draft, and then people are knocking Seattle's decision to take another running back in the second round after they just found gold in Ken Walker last year. And I've seen a lot of complaining on Twitter that they didn't bolster any side of their offense and just added or offense or defense, and then just added a second running back to take away touches from their promising second year back.
Well, so I can't really like argue with the sentiment about Seattle taking Charbonnet, but I don't think Pete Carroll can sleep well at night if he doesn't think he has two real strong running backs in that backfield. So it's not like this isn't surprising to me that they did this.
No.
And I think we all know Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. He wants to run the ball, and so he's going to he'll utilize both guys. And so I think what you have in Charbonnet is somebody you can put in the flex, and who's probably he's up there as one of the best handcuffs I think to have in the league if Ken Walker goes down, just based on volume. Mm-hmm. Ken Walker was successful as the guy after Penny went down last year. So it's obviously we're talking about late first round here. So we're talking about some unfortunate drop-offs when you're talking about first-round picks and the kind of volume you would want to get out of your first-round picks.
Right.
So, but as far as value goes, I think Charbonnet, he's going to be a low-floor guy and on a team that's going to want to run a lot. And for a first-round pick, he's lower floor, but that ceiling could get real high. And for some reason, it seems like Seattle running backs are hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't want to put too much stock in that. But, if Charbonnet gets into a situation to where, Ken Walker's out, I think he can flirt with RB1 numbers as long as that's going on. So, we're getting into some real muddy waters now later in the first round. And for some reason, maybe there's an argument at 111 outside of Levis and Charbonnet, where there's good enough value that we could look at that who Tunes takes, who aren't named Charbonnet or Levis, and go, oh yeah, that's great,
Yeah. But I think I think we're both thinking of in different ways. You're thinking best available, correct? Like,
I am. I think Tunes, his strategy was enough of best player available even last year, where I think he took a lot of wide receivers when he already had a good amount of wide receivers, but the value was there. That's what the board gave him, and he took it. Mm-hmm. So that's where my thinking is in general with Tunes, and my reasoning for him not taking Will Levis, even though since you got to replace Tannehill at some point.
At some point, hopefully sooner rather than later.
And then with that said, we get to the end of the first round, and we have CJ's second pick. CJ has the 112 and the 201, so again, he has that flexibility there. Yeah. So, we're not going past the first round, so, we're not guessing who CJ's next two picks are going to be. We're going just with the 112, which could easily end up being the 201. Who cares? But so I thought it was interesting that we went through this, and neither of us picked a tight end going in the first round. That's not that I disagree with that, clearly.
Yeah, I think all of us are a little too smart for that.
And another interesting point is that basically we flip-flopped again, like we did in the 104, 105.
Yeah, we had all the same guys. No, all the same 12 characters were all picked.
Mm-hmm. So we got I got Levis going to CJ at the 112 or 201. He has that flexibility there to take a quarterback. He's trying to get some help now that he's got Bijan Robinson. And, again, a point that I don't really think anybody should take too much stock in, but he has Malik Willis on his team. So, what does that mean? In theory, he's got Will Levis's, QB handcuff in a couple years. Who knows? But I think the potential is there enough with Levis that a guy like CJ, who's trying to fill out that quarterback room, I think he'll take a shot on Will Levis. And I thought it was pretty interesting for what you've said about Zach Charbonnet, which wasn't ripping Charbonnet. It was more ripping Seattle and their drafting strategy.
Yeah, not to speak bad of Charbonnet. No, it's more just what is Seattle thinking.
Mm-hmm. So situationally, weird that he went to Seattle in the second round, maybe, but you still have him going end of the first round here.
Yeah.
So, why is Zach Charbonnet then still a first-round pick, even though his situation was weird when and where he got drafted?
Based on everything you said when you talked about him in the last pick, I mean, Pete Carroll is going to run with two running backs, and he is going to pound the ball. Again, you're correct in saying that Seattle running backs don't have the cleanest bill of health. Those guys carry the ball a lot, and I think that they're going to continue doing that. I don't know. Geno passed the ball. Like, he was great throwing the ball last year, but are you going to bank on that for 2 more years? Are you ready to commit to Geno slinging it, for 5,000 yards, 4,500 yards next year? Or do you want to pound the ball, get a wild card spot out in the West, and see what happens? Make sure you go into the playoffs next year, or playoffs this upcoming season with at least one healthy running back, a healthy, high draft capital running back. And so I believe that's probably my Pete Carroll's thinking. And that's what makes this a sort of a tasty back end of the first pick here in a Superflex draft. I don't think he should go any higher than 11 where you have him, but I also do, in the way that I had my draft shaking out, Levis couldn't fall past 111. So
and there you have it. That's our first round. An hour and 42 minutes in. You should maybe be thanking us that we didn't go into later rounds. But so, team context, again, very important here. Had a lot to do with the picks that we made.
Absolutely.
Always something you got to think about as far as your league mates are concerned when you're in a league with them and trying to consider who they're going to take. Context is everything. And so here at RSJ Dynasty Dive, we're going to just continue to keep taking the context that we can during this long, cold offseason to keep your mind churning and your values fresh. RSJ Dynasty League rookie draft is this Monday. It will not be live streamed. We'll see how soon it gets out there. And this thing that we're trying to do here at RSJ Dynasty Dive every Tuesday, we'll see what happens. Don't know if we'll be on, Tuesday or not. I think it's a toss-up. We're going to have to see how the rookie draft goes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think it's going to be really interesting to see that, like, the pick at 104, what happens there. And that's going to determine the rest of that first round, where Levis falls, and then outside of that, it's just who values which first round wide receiver. That's going to be the thing to look for. And give us some feedback on that. Drop it in the comments of this tweet, the polls, anything like that. Let us know where you think these wide receivers are going to fall. Or if you have any questions, concerns, comments about the order we've got here, hit us up.
And never hesitate. See, I could trade talk all day and all night. Just pump an IV of Mountain Dew in my arms and I could just go, So never be afraid to tweet at RSJ Dynasty Dive if you have any questions about your particular team situation, And I know I'm happy to dive in.
Myself is included, yeah.
So we'll see what happens after this Monday's rookie draft, and as far as it goes right now, maybe we'll see it on that next Tuesday in a week, or otherwise could be Tuesday the week later. Don't know. When we know, I guess maybe we should just tweet it out when we know.
Sure.
And then, other than that, we'll see you when we see you. Thanks for checking us out.
Take care.